Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to talk about France and their unfortunate setup when it comes to War Thunder. France has always been one of those nations that has a ridiculous amount of potential, especially in ground and naval, and even in certain parts of aviation, especially at the higher echelons, but never really has got there, basically bound to decisions which have been made on the release of different vehicles. One of the things that always sticks in my mind with France is when they were first released as a ground tech tree and also an aviation tech tree, they had incredibly poor rank 1s. They have also had pretty poor rank 2s as well when they first started. There was basically only 2 planes which were fun at the lower tiers, the VG-33 I believe it's called, and that was pretty much it. All of the other ones were just massively outplayed by everything else that was around the place. And in ground, they were so bad that after the Demar formula changes, I think 2 or 3 of the vehicles had to be removed because they just couldn't pen anything. And even before that point, they could hardly pen anything anyway. The good old Pyramid Head, the FCM, and also the R, were just terrible vehicles. And imagine if you're a player, and you're like, okay, so the first thing that I want to play in the game is France, because I'm from France, or maybe I really enjoy certain French vehicles, and you are met with those vehicles. You would just turn around and go, nah, I'm good. Now, they tried to improve this with France. You know, they added a bunch of foreign vehicles to rank 2, Crusaders, for example, and also the M4A3 105, I believe it is. And yeah, it made it a little bit better. But then there was still problems with a lot of the tech tree. The RL44 was left on an island for an incredibly long time, with the Jumbo going up in BR and the M4 SA50 really being the only vehicle to look to for help. Then you had the AMX-13s, which were okay, but just kept going up in BR. Then the EBRs came along, and they kept going up in BR. And then all of the autoloaders kept going up in BR as well. There's 2 things that did help out France ground quite a lot. The first one being, of course, the autoloaders and the AP buff, but that was only realized at rank 4 at the time, really, which meant that you had to grind through a bunch of the tech tree to get to that area, and the tech tree really was woeful. Aviation, in order to get to the niceties of French aircraft, because if you get to rank 3, yeah, you get the King Cobra, you get the VBs, which are alright, but definitely not meta, and you get stuff like the F6F, which are all good, but not really French. You have to get to rank 5 or 6 to get the Mirage 3s, for example, which are quite fun. The Mirage 5 is okay, but once again, lack of countermeasures. And really, you have to just get through the stodge of those early tier jets, which are just absolutely horrific to play when they came out. They're a little bit better now, but really not a lot. And it's more about the fact that a bunch of other vehicles BRs have moved around. There's still a lot of vehicles in that French tech tree which are not very good. The Vautours for the longest time were just hunted by vehicles which had air spawns, the F-105s, and even stuff like the Harriers. Nowadays, they still get hunted, but at least it gives them an extra 5 to 10 seconds to be able to do something. And another thing that also happened to France, because it's one of these nations which isn't played by a ton of people and seen as one of those nations which is more of, I suppose, a nation where there's a lower player base of generally higher skilled people, one of the things that happened for the longest time was crazy repair costs for a bunch of them. So the Lorraine 40T, for example, which did come into the game at 6.7 or 7.0, which is ridiculous, that repair cost just flew up. Stuff like the Leclercs, for example. The Leclercs were above 20,000 SL at one point to repair. Imagine that, not having a lineup, not having anything which can even, go for a lineup. No AAs, no light tanks, and no CAS either. You just had to rely on the Leclercs, and each Leclerc was 20k to repair. Completely insane. Now, the Leclercs, when they first came out, at least the first one, was pretty good. It had a good reload, a lot better than most. It had a very powerful turret. which could stop a bunch of rounds, which was super fun, and it meant the vehicle was alright. And then they did what they always do. When you have a vehicle which is meta, which sits at the top and does really well, what generally happens is they start buffing other vehicles. There was a period of time when Gaijin decided that all high-tier MBTs needed a new set of rounds. It was around the time of the 3BM60, and also stuff like the Silver Darts being added, and all of this stuff. The Slurpagers came later on, the good old M90 or whatever it is, to just hammer everything. But the Leclerc was a massive victim of this change. This change basically meant that armor, unless you were in a Soviet vehicle, really didn't matter. You could just pen the Leclerc specifically anywhere. You could pen through the top of Challengers and just screw them up. And because Leclercs only have 3 crew, and also they have a pretty flat turret front, what would end up happening is people would just look at you and you would die. This has constantly continued since that time, and it just makes the Leclercs very sad. At least they have a slightly competent AA, which they nerfed in the last update, which sucks, but at least there's something there now for Cass as well. So at least there's that. They also had really weak premiums. I don't know how else to put it. The premiums that they've added to France, especially for aviation, have been just super weak. There isn't many which can kind of like stand up and, you know, be proud of. A bunch of Vautour premiums that are completely useless. Obviously the Mirage one is nice, but that's more of a recent addition. A lot of the mid-tier ones, you know, the Yak 3 is okay, but it's nothing special. Yak 9T was, I think, a special event one which they brought in. And then also the lower tier ones were just absolutely terrible. In ground was the same. I mean, you basically got the Dauphiné, the Panther, which is alright, but once again, not really a lineup with it. And then also you got some lower tier ones which just weren't very good. And all the ones which were okay, like the EBRs, they just shot up in BR, like just an insane amount, which obviously feels pretty bad. The other thing to supplement the trees that usually happens in War Thunder is some kind of set of event vehicles. This happens a lot with Britain, for example, and also with America, Germany, and USSR. They get a ton of these event vehicles to be able to, you know, push forward and make the tech trees better. When you think about France and event vehicles, I mean, I think they got some like Battle Pass planes, which are pretty naff, and then of course they have the Lorraine 155, which as a donkey vehicle can be quite fun, especially if you're using the smoke, but if you're talking about an actual grinder, it's pretty awful. We had to wait until this year to get the AMX 50 for the Battle Pass, or for Season 10 of the Battle Pass, to actually have a decent vehicle for France, which came out of events, which just shows the issue with them overall. And when it comes to the naval stuff, like the blue water stuff, I mean, the turrets are incredibly slow, but they do put out a lot of damage. There's ammo racks that happen all the time with the ships, which completely sucks. And also, there's no sign of some of the machines which made France famous, the Dunkirk with the quad turrets, or any of those crazy battleships. Instead, you have some First World War massive machines with huge ammo racks once again, and also no coastal tree, meaning that they just cannot actually, cap zones or anything. You just have to play for damage, which is fine, but also means you're just completely limited in what you're able to do. Helicopters are also a joke. You've got the weakest top tier helicopter in the game, and the starter helicopter is not exactly fantastic either. So you've just got a lot of weaknesses and a lot of holes in the tech tree, and I thought over time these things would be fixed. But we are here in the year of 2023, and they're not there yet. Hopefully at some point they will be. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Kupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.